Good evening. It's been a week which history will judge. Has the public's romance with Tony Blair finally gone sour? Tonight, a leaked Whitehall document suggests the government is ready to cut disability benefit as well as money to lone parents. The head of the Royal National Institute for the Blind is here with the leaked document. And the Minister for the Disabled will join us live.
Care for a scoop, good for dessert.
And in a week when the Paymaster General's millions hit the headlines, how to be radical and rich the Ben and Jerry way. Also, when is a revolutionary just a jumped-up terrorist? As Carlos the Jackal appears in a Paris court, we talk to the man who recruited him.
Carlos was a fighter who joined a cause he believed in, and he was like all other fighters.
To discuss the whole notion of radicalism in politics and business, I'm joined by that old 60s revolutionary, Tariq Ali, the millionaire ad man who bemoans the lack of big, colourful figures in politics, Peter Marsh, and Jude Kelly, who set a radical agenda for theatre in this country and who today picked up an OBE for her efforts. First, new lone parents. Now, tonight, according to a leaked memo from the DSS, disabled people and the sick could be next in line for benefit cuts. The confidential memo from the policy advisor to the Social Security Secretary, Harriet Harman, sets out some unpalatable truths on spending on the disabled. It says, it is likely that a high proportion of the necessary savings will have to come from benefits paid to sick and disabled people, including compensatory benefits for industrial injuries. It goes on to state that it will not be possible to make substantial savings from the sickness and disability benefits unless the government as a whole has a coherent and convincing story to tell about its strategy towards sick and disabled people. Well, I am joined now by Professor Ian Bruce, as well as being head of RNIB. He's also co-chairman of the Disability Benefits Consultation Area, which is very important in this context, and also from Cardiff by Anne Clwyd, who numbers among her constituents a large proportion of disabled people. First of all, Professor Bruce, you have the leaked document. Did it surprise you?
I was very surprised because what we have to remember is disabled people are among the poorest in our society. For example, half of blind people are at or below the poverty line, so we're talking about a group who are desperately dependent on benefits.
Now, what is the position with the government? You've asked for consultation, have you not?
Yes, the Secretary of State, Harriet Harman, was asked in the House, was she consulting with voluntary organisations? She said she was. I received the next day a letter from her saying that when they had more or less drawn their conclusions, they might consult. As co-chair of the Disability Benefits Consortium, I've asked for a meeting and I haven't had one. So
if she was going to consult with anyone, presumably she'd be consulting with someone like yourself?
The consortium is all the organisations, absolutely right.
Anne Clwyd, on Wednesday you voted against the government on the question of cuts to lone parent benefits. Now you hear tonight about this leaked memo purporting to put forward cuts in both disability benefits and also sickness benefits. How do you react to that?
Well, obviously I hope that it's not true, that it's not going to be acted on. I think the government did get the message on Wednesday, loud and clear, and that we can now draw a line in the sand and start again. But I'm saying this tonight because in the weeks previous to the vote on Wednesday, I kept quiet because I'm on the executive of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and we were having weekly meetings with the Prime Minister, and all my colleagues, all the elected members, were putting their concerns about lone parents to him.
But if you were putting your concerns to lone parents to him, it clearly didn't make any impact whatsoever. You're presumably having another meeting exactly the same next week. What will you be saying about this leaked document that Professor Bruce has here in his hand?
Well, I do believe that the government have learned lessons from last Wednesday, and they won't repeat this kind of thing again, because there's great concern in the Parliamentary Labour Party. Even people who voted with the government, as you know, on Wednesday night, went into the lobbies feeling very distressed, and people are still feeling distressed. And they don't want to see it happen again. They don't want to have to vote against the first Labour government for 18 years. But they have constituents and they have concerns, and they believe that a Labour government was elected not to cut the benefits of the poorest.
Do you believe a Labour government was elected not to cut the benefits of the poorest?
Absolutely. I hope Anne is right, because this letter is just around about a week old, and it could be the government will be changing its view. The point is, we have the rumours of proposed cuts of between 5% and 25%. And the thing is, that we're bewildered because the government's made great play about staying within the benefits, so within the budget limits of the Tories. The Tories were planning to increase disability benefits. Are Labour actually now going to cut them, the poorest people in our society? It is unbelievable, especially because they actually have a very good track record on disability. At the Treaty of Amsterdam, the Prime Minister himself made a very major gain for disabled people in this country. Let's not spoil it.
But Anne-Claude, finally, if it is indeed the case that the government goes ahead and there will be cuts to disability, is this something that you could vote for with your conscience acting the way it did on Wednesday?
Well, look, in my constituency, as well as having a large number of lone parents with very few jobs which they can actually take up, we also have almost a quarter of people in that constituency suffering from limiting long-term illness. It's a very high figure indeed. So obviously there is no way that I could vote for a cut in benefits to the sick and disabled.
Thank you both very much. Now, indeed, we can speak to Patricia Hollis, who is Minister for the Disabled, who agreed to take part tonight in a single interview rather than the discussion that has just preceded us. First of all, Patricia Hollis, can you tell me, is this leaked memo completely out of line? Are there no possibilities of cuts for the disabled, no possibility of cuts for the sick?
I saw that leaked document about half an hour before it appeared on Channel 4. I simply can't comment on it. We don't comment on leaked documents, so I can't help you on that.
Well, let's forget the document then, and let's just say straight away, is it possible that there will be cuts to disability benefit and cuts to sickness benefit as part of the ongoing reform of the welfare state?
Well, what we're doing is having a comprehensive spending review which must include all benefits, including disability benefits. We're partway through that review. I truthfully do not know what the outcome is going to be. But after 18 years, we've inherited a tangled web of benefits which cost 25 billion and yet don't do what disabled people themselves tell us they want to see happen, which is to give them opportunities where they can to go into work, full-time, part-time, voluntary work, but where they cannot work, to have decent and appropriate benefits. Now, our job, obviously, is to try and ensure that the benefit system delivers that agenda. We've already started on the welfare to work proposals. Gordon Brown announced the 195 million for disabled people, and we're working very positively with disability organisations, including Ian Bruce's, to devise some 20 or so pilot projects
did you
to help
hear
people
what
into work.
I would like to just check, did you hear what Professor Ian Bruce said earlier? He said, as co-chairman of the Disability Benefits Consortium, he has not been consulted about possible changes and possible cuts to disability benefits.
No, that is true. But
I'm
that
afraid
is
you're not allowed to come into this, Professor
No,
Bruce.
certainly, that is true, but that is because, understandably, we're only partway through the review and we don't yet know what our preferred options might be. They might be very minor, they might be more significant, but we would certainly not want to go ahead without proper consultation. It would be quite wrong to do so, because the people who most know about disability are disabled people and their organisations themselves.
Professor Bruce has just told us that people that he represents, blind people, among the poorest in society, these are not the kind of people that could take cuts in disability. Can you rule out cuts in disability allowances for people who are blind and out of work?
No, what we're doing is having a comprehensive spending review, and we're looking at all the range of benefits. Now, at the moment, the main income benefit for disabled people is called an incapacity benefit. Now, that signs people out of society. What we want to do is to ensure that the benefits build on people's capacities so that disabled people can do what they tell us they want to do, which is to contribute to society, either through work, through being a parent, through being engaged in voluntary work, or indeed of having decent benefits. Now, that's what we're seeking to do, but we don't know yet, I certainly don't know yet, what possible proposals we may be putting forward. So I can't rule out what Ian Bruce has said, because I do not know yet what the outcome will be. But I can assure him, and I can assure disabled people, that at the end of it, we want a decent system of benefit for disabled people, which does what they themselves want, which is to offer opportunities to work where they can, which emphasises their capacities and their abilities and the talents and expertise and contributions they can
Baroness
make.
Hoss, I just want to wind up by asking you one question. When you talk about this, you want them to be in work and so forth without...
Where they can.
Where they can be
and
in
where
work. And a high proportion of disabled people are out of work for the reasons that there aren't jobs there. But I'd like to put to you, Professor Bruce, can I just put to you Professor Bruce's point? The Conservatives had said that they would increase disability benefits ahead of inflation. Is there any chance that this Labour government might see fit to increase some disability benefits?
I think that is entirely possible. I think it may very well be that some disability benefits may very well be improved for those who are most severely disabled. That's the sort of thing we're looking at. But I have to say, the reason disabled people are not in work is not necessarily because of their disability, but because of the false perceptions of many employers and the nature of the benefit system. And along with reforming the benefit system to help disabled people increase the opportunities in their lives, to enrich their lives, we also want to ensure that we have full civil rights for disabled people so they can take full advantage of the opportunities we hope to offer them. We want disabled people to enjoy as rich and as positive and as full a life as possible. We're determined to ensure that.
Well, Baroness Halls, I'm sure we'll be coming back to this perhaps even next week. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bruce. So is Labour's honeymoon with the British public over? Since May, the Prime Minister's team has been putting down markers that this government would have to be tough before it was tender. Phrases like hard choices litter the last 9 months. But this week, the rhetoric became reality. Is this what Middle England really voted for? The hard truth is, Tony Blair knows he has to appeal to those traditionally Tory heartlands which Labour won at the last election, like Harrow West, a Conservative seat since it was created in 1945. In May, perhaps for the first time since the war, the nation seemed to speak with one voice, and new Labour MP Gareth Thomas, seen here with some local pensioners, reaped the benefit, with the biggest overturn of a Tory majority in the country.
People do want the country to be governed in the interests of everybody, of every citizen, regardless of their wealth, regardless of their background, of their colour, of their religion, etc. And Tony Blair clearly represented that hope, that direction, that sense of sort of coming together.
Without alienating his core support of traditional Labour voters, Tony Blair managed to appeal to the other half, the one called Middle England. And over the summer, something even more remarkable happened. With the extended Blair honeymoon, and especially in the aftermath of Princess Diana's death, the two nations seemed to become cemented as one. And it was Tony Blair who got the credit.
Our society has changed.
The new touchy-feely mood even infected Tory politicians, with Michael Portillo showing a new side of his character at the party conference, and William Hague getting in touch with the people at the Notting Hill Carnival. But now the honeymoon is clearly over, and it seems those two nations are really a world apart after all.
Labour put together a coalition of interests to win so well on May the 1st. In the last few weeks, the legendary tough choices that Blair talked about have arrived. He's got to make choices, and each choice can alienate a different slice of that electoral coalition that put him in power in the first place.
By standing firm on benefit cuts for lone parents this week, Blair has well and truly annoyed his traditional supporters. But has his pact with Middle England paid off? Or is he annoyed those supporters too?
I don't think he is the man that people thought they were voting for, really. I think he's come in the back door a little bit. He's basically, a lot of things he said he wasn't going to do, he's doing now. And I'm not sure if I'd vote for him in the next election.
He's got to be, well, the government generally has got to show that they're a bit more caring. The last government proved they weren't very caring. And I think it would be a very bad thing if this government doesn't actually turn that around.
Perhaps this is all part of the cunning master plan to ensure that Tony Blair smacks of firm leadership. If so, tonight's controversy over benefit cuts for the disabled suggests that it's a plan that could backfire. Well, let's look at the signals the government's been sending out over the last week. Jude Kelly, you were in Downing Street at that lovely party on Wednesday night with people like Chris Evans and Zoe Ball, when that debate was taking place. How did that appear to you? Was it an awkward thing?
Well, it was a bewildering sort of evening because on the one level, I was really glad to see Tony Blair and the government in general coming up with a much wider agenda of social inclusion, if you like, at these sorts of events where people of all different kinds of walks of life, not just celebrities, turn up and are given some welcome for what they're trying to do for Britain.
Harold Wilson did the same thing.
I'm sure he did.
It's not a new or an innovatory move, it's just the old Labour.
But the juxtaposition of the debate in that is quite interesting.
In a sense, it was an interesting thing to be part of and to see that happening. However, arriving at Downing Street and leaving Downing Street, you had lone mothers protesting very, very vehemently and in a way that was extremely upsetting. And Tony Blair himself, I have to say, looked pretty ashen and pretty flaky.
When you look now at what happened over the vote and the cut in new lone parents' benefit, and you hear the possibility of cuts in disability allowances and indeed sickness and incapacity benefit, Does it make you feel uncomfortable about being New Labour?
Well, a huge number of British people voted for New Labour because I think we all felt we were up against the rock or the hard place. We couldn't carry on with a Conservative government that had washed out all optimism and idealism and possibility. So I think that choice was one that we, well, at least two of us around this table made. I don't know about you.
I totally disagree.
Well, I'll come to you in a second.
All right. Well, you'll no doubt disagree with me vehemently all night. But the
Not vehemently.
but the thing that I think that Labour government have got to do terribly quickly is match up the language, the very fierce language that Claire Short has come up with, that Robin Cook has come up with about anti-poverty, social inclusion, all those commitments to compassion, which I do believe the British public voted for. They've got to tie that up now very quickly with some of these actions, which could appear to be completely in paradox to that.
But Tara Kelly, it wasn't the easy way out was to vote against the government on Wednesday night. In fact, it would be a much more courageous thing to do, to stick with the government, stick with the manifesto and say, you know, we will support the government all the way because we're playing the long game.
Yeah, but you know, you can't play the long game where the lives of ordinary people are affected, as they were. I mean, quite a lot of these new Labour MPs seem to live in the video sphere. They just seem to be out of touch with reality and what's taking place. And it's one thing to win an election on the video sphere. You can't run a country through the video sphere. You have to go and meet people, see what their needs are. And this Labour government, I'm afraid, I mean, we all knew it would unravel, but I never thought it would begin to unravel so quickly. I don't think it's the end by any means, but I think the shine has gone. And I think what Blair and Brown pushed through, Labour MPs will not forget. So if these disability benefits, they attempt to push them through, the revolt in Parliament will be much, much bigger.
Well, Peter Marsh, you don't believe that your hard-earned cash should go to lone mothers who can't support themselves. Does that hold true if there are disability cuts as well?
You're making assumptions about what I believe in and what I don't. I come from the working class. I left school at 15. I was brought up in a house with an outside lavatory and no bathroom, so I do know what poverty is. However, in 1944, Sir John Anderson, who was then Chancellor of the Exchequer, extrapolated the cost of the then beverage plan and said round about the turn of the century they would be unsustainable. And this is what Blair is facing at the moment. And I think people are facing hard choices. I mean, I sent a cheque off today and I realised it will pay 20,000 lone mothers for a year. Now, that's a burden I've got to support. Quite happy to do so. I don't think the rest of the country should be asked to support these people who may have been impregnated by 1, 2, 3 or 4 different people and have those children thrown on the state. But let's go to Blair just for a moment. I agree with every word that Tarek says. This is a media-created administration. They use advertising terms like New Labour. It's improved, it's there, it'll do good things for you. Blair is very poor under pressure, and one is seeing in Parliament at Hague beginning to give him a hard time because the man has no real substance, no real understanding, no real knowledge. He's never run anything except a hot air factory.
But the counter-argument is that he actually did not bow to pressure. It would have been quite easy to bow to pressure, to popular pressure. And the fact is what he's doing is he's stamping his authority on the party, which is the counter-argument to what you're saying, Tarek, that in fact by standing firm, his standing has gone up with other areas of the country which he needs to hold on to.
But there's no evidence of this at all. We'll see, you know, these people believe in focus groups and opinion polls. Absolutely. Well, we'll see what they say. But why stand firm against lone mothers rather than Bernie Ecclestone in Formula One?
Absolutely right.
So it's who you stand firm against. Absolutely. So far, it's the poor he's standing firm against.
Peter Marsh, can I just bring you round to talking about the middle class? I mean, you say you come from a working class background. You're clearly richer than the average working class family.
By my own efforts. Hard work brings its own reward.
Hard work brings its own rewards, that may be. But do you think that by hitting this constituency, which doesn't have another political place to go, it is something he can afford to do now, but he cannot afford to take from the middle classes just now because they're such recent recruits to
Absolutely. I mean, every Labour government since the war... Well, let me just give an answer which will be comprehensive. Every Labour government since the war has hit the buffers and got enormous dissension, division and bloodletting. This government is going the same way. It has got to hit the social security budget. It's a historic inevitability. If you look at the figures extrapolated, they are unsustainable, and he has got to do it. And in order to stamp his authority, he cannot back down on this particular issue.
So, Jude Kelly, if Tony Blair came into this election talking and taking the one nation rhetoric, with this direction we're moving in now, do you see the country still as one nation now, 9 months into Labour government?
Well, I think what will happen actually is that those people who talked about compassion, and it wasn't just the poor who were talking about it. I think a lot of people couldn't stomach any longer the state of the nation emotionally. I think they will come back very hard on the government if they don't stick to those principles. There are actions within the manifesto, but there are principles within the manifesto, and those principles have got to be adhered to. And I think that, I hope Anne Clwyd is right, that this week will have been a jolt to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and that they are courageous and intelligent enough to then do something about it.
But unless they tame this social security budget, this will be a one-term government, without any shadow of doubt.
But what do you say to the accusation that, in fact, there's a lot more in the coffers than Gordon Brown thought he had, and in fact, he can afford to make manoeuvres in other directions?
But that is like saying, oh, we've got enough for the moment to have a good blowout, but how on earth are you going to pay for the kids' education in years to come? The budgets are going to become unsustainable by the turn of this century, so whatever government, whatever its colour, it has got to do something about social security.
I agree with that. I mean, I think everybody understands that, that the welfare system has got to be reformed because we can't sustain it. But I think that is such a long, detailed, an important, complex thing to do. You have to do it in relation to the people it's going to affect. You can't do it without consultation.
No, I'm awfully sorry. It's like saying you can make omelettes without breaking eggs. You will always hit special interest groups. There will always be special pleading for certain groups. In the end, government has got to govern, and it hurts some people.
Yeah, that's not a reason not to talk.
Terry Kelly, just to come back to you, that memo did come out a week ago. Will the government hit the buffers over this, or do you think they will ride this through as well if it indeed comes to pass?
Well, I think, given the composition of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and the large majority, if Blair wants to push through disability benefits, I think most of the Parliamentary Party, the clones and the robots, the Millbank tendency, will vote for it. Yeah. The young things who've come in will vote for it, and you'll have probably 60 or 70 MPs who'll abstain or vote against.
Indeed.
If indeed it comes to that.
What addresses every politician is power. They love it. They're also insensately egocentric, and therefore they're very dangerous people.
Well, we'll wait and see about that. But among the many signals that Tony Blair sent out this week was one that indicated that very rich people are more than welcome in the Labour Party, and indeed in government. Such was effusive praise of his multimillionaire Paymaster General. Geoffrey Robinson has threatened legal action over stories in last Sunday's Observer and Sunday Times alleging he salted money away in Bermuda. So you can make a pile and remain true to your principles. Well, two old hippies who started making ice cream in a tiny shop in 1978 seem to have managed it. Now flavours like Chunky Monkey and Cherry Garcia are sold all over the world. Ben & Jerry gives 7.5 of their profits and a portion of their employees' time to charity. Here's their guide on how to get rich and keep your principles.
We started as a homemade ice cream parlor in an old gas station in Burlington, Vermont, just south of the Canadian border. And we started on an investment of $8,000 and learned how to make ice cream from a correspondence course. I'm Ben. I'm one of the co-founders, one of the ice cream dudes.
I'm Jerry, co-founder along with Ben. Ben is the creative driving force behind the company, and I am the voice of reason.
We have a turnover of about $170 million a year and 700 employees.
We are a company that tries to use its power to help influence society for positive, progressive ways. So we see business not just as an entity to make money and maximize profit, but to also give back to the community at the same time. We sometimes make flavors where there are ingredients that we specifically source from places like a bakery that works with formerly homeless people or people that have been in prison, so that it makes a great flavor. People love the flavor, and it makes money for the company, and at the same time we're helping the work that they do. Yeah.
Once you change the way you look at things and change your paradigm, the opportunities to combine meeting social needs with making money are endless. Originally, the most powerful force in the society was religion. And then the most powerful force in society came to be government, nation states. And today, the most powerful force in the society is business. And you can see this reality echoed in the buildings in the major cities in the countries around the world. And you see that the oldest big ornate building was a religious institution. And then the second oldest big ornate building is a governmental institution. And today, the big ornate buildings that are being built are commercial institutions. And the difference is that now that business is this most powerful force, instead of having as its major purpose to be the welfare of society, as it was with religion and government, business has never had any concern about anyone's welfare except its own narrow self-interest. That's the problem. All right.
So we realized that giving away a small percentage of our profits was never going to make a dent in issues. And so we started to think about our business, and if we're a $170 million business, the company might make, several million dollars. Instead of giving away a small percentage of that, we realized that there's maybe $160 million that's passing through the business, either in ingredients or how we sell ice cream or all the normal business functions. And we thought if we could make a social component be part of all that money that was just flowing through the business, that was really where our power lay in how we did our day-to-day business transactions. I think initially Ben and I were not taken so seriously because we don't really look like business people and we have different methods of doing things, but eventually people have to start to accept that your business is incredibly successful, customers are responding incredibly well to your so-called weird business practices, and it gives you a lot of credibility because you are performing and succeeding by traditional business measures as well as succeeding on other terms.
Ben and Jerry. Peter Marsh, is this proof that you can make money and still be nice?
Well, the two are not mutually incompatible. To me, it was like the Lego do-it-yourself kit on successful management. They're coming out with the most resounding cliches as if this has just come from the top of Mount Sinai. Any employer, let me give you some examples. We used to give 8.5% of our gross profit to our staff, because when you're in a labour-intensive business like we are, 80% of the assets go up and down to the lift every night. Therefore, you treat them well, you treat them proper, you pay them ahead of the market rate, you give them terms and conditions that are tremendous. So all they're doing is reiterating old truths and reboiling old cabbage water.
But by saying that they give a proportion of their profit to charity,
yes,
then is that not proof that if business wants to, it can act in the greater good?
Of course they do. I mean, the John Lewis Partnership does it. Every reasonable business behaves for the public good. You are more concerned with your public reputation than the most anxious virgin who's worried about being deflowered. You are very concerned about your public reputation. It is part of good business practice and ethics, believe you me. I know that the sort of hegemony of the left says all capitalists are evil. It's a load of rubbish.
Terry Cally, you've moved from, as it were, revolutionary to a film production company. I mean, I'm not suggesting for a moment that you're a millionaire, but is it possible? Is it possible to be ethical and very rich? Do you think, really?
Well, I think it's possible. I don't think it's very likely. I think some companies are. I think some individuals are. But one can't generalize from one particular company or two particular individuals to the system as a whole. I mean, a system as a whole, which is based essentially on making profits, cannot apply to the country as a whole. I mean, there will always be those who run these companies, and there will always be those who work for them, and never the twain shall meet. I don't think one can pretend otherwise.
But honestly, there's a lot of folklore that has no substantive evidence. It's like, what about all these misleading advertisements? You say, which advertisements? You say, oh, well, I can't think of one at the moment. If you take the top 100 companies in the FTSE, every single one has got honour at its base. ICI, Cadbury's, the John Lewis Partnership. Integrity is an integral part because they're in it for the long term, not the short term.
Well, if we were talking about integrity, Jude Kelly, do you think there's anything in the kind of Ben and Jerry model that could be learned for things like, you know, your theatre, for example?
Well, first of all, I thought they were great, maybe because they looked like they eat their own ice cream, and because they looked like they were fun.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that when I saw Anita Roddick in Powwow with Eddie George, he really, really didn't like her. And the financial press really don't like her because they can't bear the idea that idealism and the bottom line can actually intermingle in some sort of complex way, which I think they can. And the person I've probably learnt the most from actually, unfortunately, died a few weeks ago. I'm just going to say something about him, Jonathan Silver, who was a multimillionaire, along with Sir Ernest Hall, making all the money in carpet factories, and then both separately buying these huge mills in the north of England and creating these practical working spaces of enterprise and art mixed. And they have changed those communities because of how they use their money. The thing at the end of the day, yes, you can be very rich, you can be principled if you do something useful with your money.
But is it also the case, do you think, that in the 90s, it's actually good business to be environmentally sound, that in fact, people know generally about Ben & Jerry's, don't they? They know about the ethics behind Ben & Jerry's, so presumably they feel they're buying into that. That's more than advertising can buy.
I think that whole thing of catching up with the ethics quickly, like, you know, the way suddenly everything went green because it was fashionable, that can make people very cynical. I mean, I don't believe that people who are entrepreneurial but philosophical are actually just doing it for branding purposes. I think other people might follow their line for branding purposes, and I think that isn't the long-term view. So I think that people like Ben & Jerry, I don't think they're just doing the same thing people have done before. They're not reinventing the wheel. They're really...
With the British respect, I worked for 40 companies intimately, multinationals, family companies, companies in the nationalised sector, and you find that good companies that are producing goods that they want to sell or services on a repeat basis, integrity has got to be an integral part of that particular exercise.
Well, just to bring that back
and
to
Anita
New Labour,
Roddick, the reason people don't like her is because she shoots her mouth off too much. Nothing to do with her principle.
Well, she's
an art self-publicist.
Well, perhaps so, but
and you might
also say
Not
that
like
under New Labour, that in fact Tony Blair likes to be seen with rich people. There's nothing wrong under New Labour with being rich. Do you think that's a step forward?
Bernie Ecclestone will tell you all about that. And again, that's an indication of the worries I think Tarek and I have for this government. I mean, to actually allow a man directly into Downing Street who's given you £1 million, and the following day an instruction goes out to change the policy, if that ain't Tammany Hall politics and lack of public comprehension, I don't know what is. And also that extraordinary interview with John Humphreys, when Blair's worries were not what he'd done, but that he had not presented it well enough so people understood him properly. How dare you think that I have done wrong? Trust me, believe me.
Right, well, we'll leave that one there. But terrorism in the guise of 70s radicalism was revisited today when Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, the man known as Carlos the Jackal, appeared in court in Paris surrounded by top security, charged with the murder of 2 French Secret Service agents in 1975. For 22 years, the man who called himself a professional revolutionary evaded intelligence services around the world. And described as the world's most wanted terrorist, he's believed to have masterminded kidnaps and killings by the dozen. Mark Irvin looks back at the era when self-styled revolutionaries from around the world joined forces in an international campaign of mayhem.
The man who went on trial today is accused of killing more than 80 people. He defended himself, though, as a professional revolutionary acting for political motives. Carlos is one of the last representatives of a band of international terrorists who shocked the world in the 1970s. During the late 60s, anti-American activists around the world rallied to Vietnam War protests. Their actions put them on a collision course with authority.
The failure of the mass protests of 1968 to produce a revolution left many of the student radicals disappointed and frustrated. Some of them were even willing to fight for their beliefs, but they found that America's enemies in the Viet Cong were not enlisting foreign volunteers. So they turned their attentions and their anger to somewhere closer to home, the Middle East.
Horst Mahler helped found the German Baader-Meinhof group. In 1970, they went to Jordan to meet radical Palestinians.
It had always been, for me especially, and for all the others, a problem, our past with the Jews and the identity as German. But Israel and the Israeli government is more or less a main factor for US politics in this area, in the Middle East. And so the Palestinian fighting Israel as a state fought the United States imperialism.
Beirut was the first port of call for those offering help. In 1969, a young Venezuelan, Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, presented himself at the offices of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
When I first saw him, he was so young, handsome, and I asked him the question, why do you come to the Palestinians? I mean, why do you come to the Popular Front? And it was very clear on his mind. I mean, the Palestinian cause was his own cause in his own way, coming from Venezuela, where the leftist movement had suffered setbacks. One way probably of releasing this revolutionary frustration was to find another cause, a promising one.
The following year, Bassam Abu Sharif was playing ringmaster for the hijackers who flew 4 planes to a disused airfield in Jordan.
Bassam, could you come out front, please, to answer? All women and children who should have been released were released.
The world's media flocked there. The hijackers got away. Terrorists everywhere wanted to emulate this coup. In Germany and other European countries, other graduates of the Palestinian camps began their own agendas of violence.
We saw it in the TV in Japan, in Italy, in the United States, and in France, everywhere. We saw such starting groups trying to do similar or the same things as we did. And we felt very strong to be a part of an international movement.
Was it intoxicating? Was it exciting to be underground in that way?
It was not exciting. It was very full of stress.
For governments of the day, the stress lay in finding ways to protect people from arbitrary death meted out by hijackers and gunmen. Newsprint and film were consumed in enormous quantities, describing the latest outrages.
The order went out in a similar situation: shoot to kill. Don't try to capture the attackers, because prisoners breed further attempts like this.
And art imitated life, writers bringing international terrorism to the unlikeliest of surroundings.
This is the March 11th group, speaking from Burhamster Airfield.
Go ahead, Burhamster, we're receiving you.
The president of the company, John Bauer, is now held captive by revolutionary forces working in the United Kingdom.
Even radical chic pop groups find Carlos's image useful in selling themselves. Carlos reached the peak of his powers with the seizure of the OPEC headquarters in Vienna in 1975. He managed to fly his gang and several hostages to Algiers, pocketing $20 million in ransom. It was one of the last times that hijackers got away. In Lebanon, civil war embroiled the Palestinian factions in bitter street fighting against fellow Arabs, not American imperialists. The foreign volunteers dwindled.
These young radicals and revolutionaries, as I said, came with the hope that they will put into practice their own ideologies and ambitions, and probably thought in their own way that victory is next door. While after 4 or 5 years, the situation proved to them that it's a long-term thing, and Many of them left, and very few continue to come.
The hijack of a Lufthansa jet in 1977 proved to be a turning point. The hijackers were Palestinians from the Popular Front seeking the release of Baader-Meinhof prisoners in German jails.
We didn't want any bloodshed, but the imperialist fascist German regime refused our demands.
But international terrorism was met with international response. The Somali government allowed German and SAS commandos to storm the plane. 3 terrorists were killed, 1 survived.
I guess people tried to get out of it. Not to go to the police and say, here I am, but to find a place where they could live.
Bassam Abu Sharif was one of the few radicals who managed to reinvent himself and keep his freedom. He backed Yasser Arafat's peace process and now lives in the Palestinian self-rule area of Gaza. He still feels sympathy for former comrades on the run and for Carlos himself.
I think that after so many years, more than 22 years, Carlos should be released to be let relax the rest of his life.
By the end of the 70s, states had adopted new counter-terrorist laws and tactics, and the supply of foreigners like Carlos, who'd once headed for the Middle East to practice international revolution, dried up.
That report by Mark Urban. Tariq Ali, leaving Carlos de Jekyll aside himself, why was this revolutionary ferment in the late 60s so exciting?
Well, I'm glad we're leaving Carlos aside because this had very little to do with the ferment of the 60s, in my opinion. The reason it was exciting was, there was a big cultural revolt against the repressive codes of the 50s. People were fed up with that, particularly in Britain and North America. Secondly, you had a massive war going on in Vietnam, which people felt was unfair. America pitted against a peasant country, albeit communist. And there was a rebellion against that war all over the world, in Europe and the United States itself, with American students, soldiers coming out against the war. So that war dominated our consciousness. Then you had the Russian invasion of Czechoslovakia, which was resisted, which we also supported the resistance to the invasion of Czechoslovakia. And the third was a giant general strike of 10 million workers which paralyzed France. So these 4 things taken together created the mode of the 60s.
But in a sense that was more than not abroad, and really here it was a kind of pale imitation. I mean, there wasn't really that much
Or
going
Britain.
on in the end.
Yeah, but no, here it was a pale imitation.
Do you feel that?
Of course it
did you
was.
feel that
But we're talking, it was a global event, the 60s.
Well, I mean, there are certain things that I have strong memories of watching, some of which when I was quite small, I have to say, but I mean, the civil rights movement generally swept across. I mean, the Northern Ireland civil rights movement was an enormous thing. I remember the civil rights movement generally in America having an enormous impact on all issues to do with racism, and I think that's carried on since then. And actually the ability of young people to protest and insist that things were going to be changed and then seeing them be changed, I think that still reverberates now.
Peter Marsh, were you possibly a radical in the 60s?
Well, I mean, anybody who's in the 60s. I was within walking distance of Carnaby Street and the American Embassy and also the Chinese Embassy, so you were in the midst of it all happening. And to hear the first Beatles song and see Terence Donovan and David Bailey, so culturally it was tremendous, and Carnaby Street and all that bit. But also, I think Tarek's absolutely right. Vietnam, in order to protest, you've got to have a hard wall against which to throw the ball of protest.
Well,
Vietnam was it.
Well, with that, we'll leave you. Thank you very much indeed. And just time for tomorrow morning's front pages. The Daily Telegraph, Blair fights for entry to the Euro Club. Harriet Harman targets sick and disabled, it says on the left-hand side, looking for £2 billion cuts. And the Times, Treasury was kept in the dark by Robinson, it says. And finally, onto the Guardian, the man Labour wants to gag. Apparently, Labour is not very happy to put their ministers up in the Today programme to talk to John Humphreys. Well, that's all from Newsnight tonight. Gordon will be back with more on Monday. Until then, from all of us in the programme, a very good night.